welcome everybody to this exciting event, Unlocking Leadership Secrets, the Power of Effective Negotiation, and with Jim Camp Jr., co-owner of CAF Negotiations and a respected figure in the field of strategic negotiation. Jim is an expert at teaching people how to negotiate better, both at work and everyday life. And what's outstanding is that Jim has used his negotiation skills throughout his career in Air Force. It's actually one of the things that help Jim raise to the very respected rank of Major General. And that means he was exceptional at talking through tough situations and making sure everyone on his team was on the same page. Now, he uses those same skills to help other people get better at negotiation and making great deals and solving problems. And as we gather here today, we are not just in the presence of decorated military leader, but with a seasoned negotiator whose insights have the power to transform the way we think about negotiation in our daily life. And I am delighted and thrilled to have Jim with us today to talk about negotiation and answer all our questions. So thank you very much, Jim, for joining today. And it's so kind of you to come over and share your wisdom with the negotiation practice community and LinkedIn community. And I really appreciate that.
Hey, thanks for having me. The great thing about technology is it always fails us when we really need it. So that's okay.
Yeah, I'll keep working on that. I apologize for this unexpected thing. So we'll have a recording. We definitely screencast it. And there's a lot of questions I would like to ask you about negotiation. But before that, I really would like to hear your story of your career. What's your story about this transitioning from a pilot and a military leader to a negotiation coach and a company owner?
That is a great question. I think what I've learned with a lot of folks that I have interacted with, in the civilian, obviously the civilian side and the military side is, we all start out on a path trying to figure out what we're going to do with our life, how we're going to, we have these great ideas, especially when you're young. I'm going to do this, and you kind of lay out a track for yourself. And my path, like many others, has taken a lot of twists and turns. Things that I didn't expect. Very young, was in athletics, played football, kind of grew up in an athletic family. A lot of us played in college, and that was my main focus. And then I decided to fly airplanes, and I thought I wanted to be an airline pilot, and I did become an airline pilot. But just like my dad, Jim Sr., we had very similar paths. We're both military pilots. But both of us were drawn to, I guess, the challenges associated with entrepreneurship, trying to start a business. And, I quickly found myself when Jim Sr. left the airline business. He was a captain for FedEx, Federal Express. And I remember the day in his mid-50s when he said, I'm gonna quit flying airplanes, and I'm going to become an author and a negotiation coach. And he had been working in the negotiation business for quite some time as an entrepreneur while he was flying airplanes. And that's kind of the great thing about being an airline pilot is you have a lot of time off. And in his time off, his extracurricular activities, if you will, in the business world started to overtake his desire to fly. And for me, getting to work with him around the time frame when he published his first book, Start With No, my job was to essentially talk to everyone that reached out to us. So if you want to say I was in sales, that's probably a good description of that. But I quickly learned his system of negotiation. It became a part of me, part of my habit patterns. And I had plans of separating from the military in October of 2001. That was my plan. I was flying for United Airlines, working with Jim Sr. and his company doing negotiation coaching. So I actually started getting involved with coaching real deals and working with clients and teaching them. And 9/11 happened. And all of a sudden I found myself, 5 years later, I basically never went back to United Airlines. I stayed with the military and told my father, I said, this is my passion. The leadership side of the military was very appealing to me, and I wanted to see, where that would take me. So I went all in with the military after 9/11 and basically never looked back. And how I got here today was not something I predicted. I just stayed with it, and I kept getting promoted, and I kept finding myself in different surroundings with different opportunities, and the challenge and the people was just an amazing path for me. So I don't have any regrets, but it's just kind of ironic that when I look back, and if I think about leadership in the military and I think about negotiation, I've for years have attributed my success as a leader, to a lot of smart people that worked with me to help me. First and foremost, you're only as good as your team. But I discovered that everything I did with our teammates, with almost daily interactions, were all negotiations. It was all the process of reaching an agreement. And so the negotiation system that I had kind of embedded in me from a very young, point in my career has stayed with me all the way through the leadership journey that I've been on. And that is by far the foundation of my success as a leader, is being able to effectively reach agreements with my team, and the internal agreements and even some external agreements in the military that I got involved with. So it's almost if someone would have told me, hey Jim, this is going to be your story, 25, 30 years ago, I probably would have laughed and said, there's no way I'm going to quit flying airplanes. There's no way I'm going to, it was just unpredictable, but very fulfilling. So now I find myself excited about transitioning and helping leaders at all levels become better negotiators, because the two go hand in hand.
It's fascinating story, Jim, and I'm really surprised to hear, as many other people too, that negotiation is so important in the military career, and negotiation is so important in the flying airplane business. So it's like really it's something that is essential for many industries that are not related to procurement, not related to sales. Like military, you don't sell anything there, but you actually do, and in a way, right? So I'm wondering, like, what are the biggest lessons that you've learned throughout your remarkable career about negotiation, about leadership?
Well, I think let's start with the perception of the word negotiation. I think it's important we start with just kind of the mindset around that word. And the definition of the word negotiation is really important. So if I were to ask everyone on the call, how would you define the word negotiation? What we've discovered through working with a lot of our clients when we have a workshop, or even when we're working with individual teams on real negotiations, you get a lot of different answers. But when you boil down the definition of negotiation, it's simply an agreement, or the process of reaching an agreement between two or more parties, with all parties having the right to veto, the right to say no. And when you look at the leadership side, what I've discovered, just because you're the boss and you have the position or the rank or the authority to say, this is what I want my team to do. Certainly, with authority, you can demand things of your team. But if you want to preserve your team, and you want your team to want to work with you for a long period of time, I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard the saying, people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. And if a negotiation is simply an agreement with all parties having the right to say no, then everybody that serves with me in the Ohio Air National Guard or in the Air Force all have an enduring agreement with their leadership. they all agree to make sacrifices, right? To deploy, to go into harm's way, to many of you may not know this, but our entire military structure right now is an all volunteer force. Nobody's been drafted, knock on wood. Everybody's there because they want to serve. So as a leader, it's not enough to just demand, hey, follow me, take my direction, do what I say. It's better if you can actually form an agreement between you and your teammates so that they're bought into what you're doing and why you're doing it. You know, what's behind hard decisions? Why are we doing the things we're doing? So when you can form that internal alignment with your teammates, they're going to stay with you longer. And that's something that's a big challenge today in the business world, is retaining talent and keeping people on your team. So that's how I kind of view leadership and negotiation as being connected. They're just, when you look at it through that lens, almost everything you do on a daily basis is negotiating, reaching an agreement with your teammates.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to just say, well, I'm the boss and I'm in charge, and that'll only get you so far, right? That's only going to build, you know, a certain amount of cohesion. But the really cohesive teams are the ones that all are rowing in the same direction for the same reasons. And that's the job of a leader, is to help people see what you're trying to accomplish. And then the other aspect of it is, you know, I'm a servant leader, so I like to serve others. I like to help others succeed. It's probably the most fulfilling side of leadership, is helping people succeed and reach their goals and push themselves beyond where they think they're capable of going. And I find that in the negotiation world, working with our clients that are, you know, if a CEO of a manufacturing company has thousands of people that work for them, they're negotiating on behalf of every family member that supports that organization. And watching those leaders succeed at securing a very lucrative contract that's going to keep their company in business, you know, for a long period of time is also equally rewarding. So I used to think I should have been a football coach years ago, you know, and I thought I missed out on coaching, but really that's what the military has been. It's been a coaching environment. And negotiation coaching is the same way. It's about helping others succeed, and that's a lot of fun. And once people discover that you can give someone the right to say no, and that it's okay to hear the word no, because that's really when the negotiation gets interesting, they're less prone to compromise. They become more comfortable being uncomfortable. It's a good way to say it. You know, these negotiations they're in are very stressful. And we have adapted a systematic approach to this so that it keeps them in emotional control at all times. But obviously it takes time and energy to learn that system that Jim Sr. eloquently in both books kind of laid out. Here's the principles of what we do and how we structure negotiation and how we prepare, execute, and debrief as a team. Having a system in place is what gives you the emotional control when things around you are falling apart. There's a lot of stress for people when they negotiate because of the constant pressure to get results. And I think the word no is misconceived as well. It's not a negative, it's simply a decision. And it's not derogatory in any way. It's just people make decisions, and interesting thing about decisions is they can be changed. It's not necessarily an absolute no when you hear it. You just have to have the courage to continue. And we have a saying, you know, we decide when a negotiation ends. It's when we decide to walk away. So very interesting environment, but the two are leadership and negotiation, I think, are so tightly connected. I think that's why it's very compelling for me to get back into it, because I'm helping others succeed, which is exactly why I enjoyed putting on uniform all these years.
Yeah, it's really liberating to know that your boss or your colleagues are completely fine hearing the word no. And it's so liberating to understand that you actually hold yourself up when when you fear to say no, and when you fear to hear no. And it's so liberating. You kind of start to think like, oh, I can actually do more things now. I can actually ask more questions now. I can actually offer more services now to people, because you can always get back to them and you can always renegotiate it. And you're completely comfortable. It's amazing. It's amazing. Just the philosophy of it, understanding of it. And I'm wondering, Jim, if you have a good example of how some, maybe big leaders, some high ranks, actually, being deliberate about encouraging people say no. If there is any in your career, if there is any example when a big leader would say like, "Hey, tell me no. I'm completely comfortable with that."
Yeah, great question. I'm not going to use names because I don't want to assume that they'll be okay with me talking about them. But recently, we had a general officer, a 4-star general, come to one of our bases in Ohio. And I was sitting in the audience, and as he was up on stage, he's a very humble man, very open to suggestions and ideas, and collaborative by nature, because I've worked with him. I worked with him in the Pacific. We did an exercise out there in 2019, and he was in Ohio, a few years later. And when he got up on stage, the messages, and I think this holds true for a lot of companies, change is uncomfortable, and changing an organization, changing your direction is something that requires some really serious leadership ability. And he openly admitted, he said, I don't have the answers of how we have to change the Air Force. I don't have the playbook for all the changes we need to make. And he looked at everybody there, and there was, over 1,000 young airmen there. He looked them all in the eye, and he said, I need you to feel comfortable hearing the word no. I need you to have the courage to work through your chain of command. And I love the fact he said everybody has 6 bosses. We all have 6 bosses, right? There's always a level of folks above you. If you're a CEO, you have a board of directors, right? If you're, there's always people that you have to answer to. And he said, just raise your concerns, raise your ideas, have the courage to reach up the ladder and say, I think we can improve if we do this instead of this. Suggest changes to the way we do business. And he said, at first you're going to hear the word no. In fact, you may either hear the word hell no. We can't do that because policy says we have to do it this way, and we've been doing it this way for a long time. And I think here's where the challenge of change comes in, right? The bigger the organization, the harder it is for that organization to change directions. But he said, after you hear the word no, don't be discouraged by that. Keep going. Try to get an exception to the policy to make changes internally. I'll back you up on that. And he said, what'll happen is over time, after you've been told no on numerous occasions, eventually the Air Force itself will say, why haven't we been doing it this way for forever? And he said, that's how we're going to change as a team. It's not going to come from leadership pushing down their brilliant ideas. It's going to be from leaders facilitating the collaboration within their team to get their ideas and how they see the world, because that's where we make our money, right? The folks that are doing the hard work every day typically have answers to things that a leader's not going to have in their scope. The higher you go, the more rocks you put in your backpack, as we used to say, the more people you're responsible for. You have to learn to trust those people at a greater level the bigger your team becomes. And he was willing to ask the youngest people in that audience, this gentleman has 600,000 people in the Air Force he's responsible for.
Wow.
It's a very large organization. And he said, I need all of you to have the courage to hear the word no. And when I heard that speech, I was contemplating getting out of the military. And obviously, no is a big word for me. It's our system of negotiation. I about fell out of my chair. And I said, okay, he's on to something. There's a concept here that is very important. And so that was probably one of the most inspiring talks that I've had, just because it was reinforcing what I believe to be true, what our company believes to be true, and what my father, Jim Camp Sr., believed to be true, is that no is not a bad thing. It's actually very positive when you learn how to say it and when you learn how to hear it. So hope that answers your question, Vlad.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example. That's fantastic. And it's so inspiring because it's bold. The leader at the high level encouraging people to propose their ideas, to just come up and say whatever they think, to hear no. Essentially, it puts a lot of responsibility on management as well. It's not like you are just saying no and people go away. You're making a decision to say no. So it's really a very encouraging and empowering concept that no is a decision. And it comes to the mindset, and I'm wondering if people actually come up on their own with this concept, or maybe that high rank commander, he read a book of your father and actually realized that this is actually what he needs to do in his group, with his people, with his team, in order to boost the productivity, in order to boost collaboration, in order to innovate and just improve all the aspects of working together. It's just amazing.
I think one of the other aspects, you hit on something, and I want to make sure I cover this. When you're asking someone to make a difficult decision, to do something that requires change, or to do something that maybe they're not necessarily happy with, right? You're asking them to make a hard decision. By allowing them to, or giving permission for someone to tell you no, even as a leader. And again, even if you have the authority to say, this is an order, I want you to do this, just by giving them the ability to reject what you're putting forward, to reject what you're proposing, that lowers their emotion. And what I mean by that is, the harder the decision, the more emotional we are. We're all humans. We're all emotional creatures. And when you make that decision and you say the word no, especially when a leader says, tell me what I'm missing, tell me if you disagree, I want to hear it and I want to know why. When they say the word no, and then when they really start to think about that decision, what's behind their decision, once a decision is made, the brain automatically, the emotions kind of lower, and it gives us the ability to then intellectually justify our decision. Like, we can start to think, okay, why am I so fearful around this decision? Why does this not sit well with me? And when you can actually talk and have those discussions around the decision itself, and it's okay to say no, you start to uncover what the real problems are. What's the real issue? What's really behind the decision making? And that's where the title of the book, Start With No, comes from. Reaching a no, getting the emotion out of the way, then we can uncover what are the real problems we're trying to solve. And then what's great about it is when they finally do make a decision to move forward with change, or to do something that they're not comfortable with, it's now their idea. It's not you pushing a decision on them or trying to force the deal. It becomes their idea. They own it. And that that decision that they make is more solidified because you gave them the right to say no. You have a tighter agreement that's going to last. And then we discovered that, not having the answers and not being the smartest person in the room is actually a good thing. It's an advantage if you're negotiating, because we want to spend all of our time in our opponent's world, not our world. But conventional wisdom will tell us, well, you have to make a presentation, you have to convince me, you have to sell them on this idea. Well, sometimes selling someone on an idea is positioning yourself with your behavior so that it becomes their discovery, their idea, not simply you presenting all the reasons why they should agree with you. So no is extremely powerful to bringing down barriers when you give someone the right to say no. It's very respectful as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we need to all learn more about this, and I am so glad that your father actually wrote the book. And actually, there are two books. I believe that the one is Start with No, and the other one is the book called No, the Only Negotiation System You Need for Work and Home. And by the way, because we started to talk about this, I would like to remind everybody that who joined the call, or maybe you will be watching the recording, Jim has a gift for all of you who join. It's a book, and this is this book, I believe. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the book, No, the Only Negotiation System You Need for Work and Home. How to get the book? If you send a message directly to Jim in LinkedIn, or me, if it's more comfortable for you, with the word book, and leave your email address, then you will receive a link to download the book and a coupon code from Camp Negotiations within 48 hours. So it's a wonderful gift. Thank you very much, Jim. Am I correct about the book name? Is that the book?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much for this wonderful gift. And I started to read that. Actually, I purchased that before the gift, so I don't have opportunity to take advantage of this wonderful gift. But I started to read that, and it's just opening my eyes. It's so powerful, and it's so, I have so many epiphanies about this. So, and I would like to actually remind you, if you have questions on this call, raise your hands, and I will be calling you to ask your question. It will be a Q&A part of it, in the order that you raise your question. So Jim will answer your question here on this call, just stay muted if you're not speaking, and when you come on stage, when I call you, then please unmute yourself and speak. And also, I heard exciting news, Jim, about you actually writing your own book. And I'm wondering how much you can actually tell us about the book that you're writing, why you're writing it, and what this will be about. And I'm assuming negotiation, but maybe you can let us take a peek at what will be the purpose of this book.
Yeah. So the idea is, when I started doing some research on leadership, there's a lot of characteristics of good leaders. We see it every day, right? We've all worked with folks that have a lot of talent. And different situations, I think, can call for different leadership characteristics. It's situational, so it kind of depends on the scenario. But the interesting thing about leadership is, there's no real systematic way to approach leadership. And given the fact that I, was so blessed as a leader to have a system of negotiation that I have adapted and made kind of a habit pattern, knowing that system of negotiation made me a better leader. My theory in the book is that, the most popular form of negotiation on the planet is not necessarily, you could argue that it's sales, procurement, mergers and acquisitions, contract negotiations. But the most common, getting down to the definition of the word negotiation, the most common agreement that we have is leadership. Leadership is a form of negotiation. So I've decided to write a book. It's going to be titled Lead from No. which is obviously very similar to Start With No. But I'm going to walk people through the journey of what I've experienced as a leader, what I've experienced in negotiation coaching with organizations and different clients, obviously keeping everything confidential because we have to do that for our clients. But I'm going to basically walk through everything that we teach in negotiation and how it applies to leadership, and share some of my stories and lessons that I've learned through the years as a leader. So I'm pretty excited about the fact that I'm almost done with the rough draft. It's a very difficult thing to write a book. It's incredibly challenging because you have to put your name on it, right, at the end of the day. But I think it's just another way to expose folks to our system of negotiation. And, even if you only lead 2 people, and it's for all ages, young folks that have been leading for a long time or folks in their first job, if they can learn how to negotiate and think about negotiation as a leader and view their agreements with their teams as negotiations, I believe they're going to be much more successful as a leader and much more successful in their career. So that's the whole point of the book, is to help people adapt different things that we teach in our system that are going to help them immediately.
Yeah, definitely. It will be a very helpful book. And do you know when we can anticipate this book to come out and maybe be coming on pre-order?
Oh yeah. So I believe this January we'll get into the marketing phase of my book with the publisher, where we'll start to be able to let people pre-order the book. So probably this winter that'll start, or January is my guess, and then depending on the scary thing to say, but it's true. They say all great books are rewritten numerous times. It'll also depend on how much time I can devote to getting through all the revisions and editing, and that because I do want to put my best foot forward. If somebody's going to take the time to read my book, I want to make sure it's worth their time. So hopefully this spring, early summer, it'll publish, but we'll start doing pre-orders. I'm guessing in January.
Sounds good. So I would be happy to kind of help you with the pre-order. And by the way, if you want to pre-order this new book about leadership and negotiation of Jim Camp Jr., and you would like to have this book, the first one that comes out, please send your direct message to Jim or myself with the word pre-order, and then leave your email address. And when the book becomes available, then Jim will send, or Camp Negotiation will send you the link to pre-order. So I will be happy to read this book, and I'll be happy to also help to pre-order this book when you want it. And if you have a question, don't forget you can raise your hand in Zoom, and I will ask one more question here, and then we will have a Q&A session. So I will call you to ask a question in the order of how we actually raise hands. And Jim, last question from me, because we need to start to get questions from everybody. So I'm wondering, if someone would really like to improve their negotiation skills, become better at that, get more comfortable with hearing no, saying no, get more comfortable with making those agreements, making the tough decisions, whatever, what would be your advice to those people who really want to learn how to negotiate?
I think the very first step, is, first of all, changing behaviors is one of the hardest things a person can do. And the first part of changing behavior is you have to recognize things that you do well and things that maybe need improvement. It's very similar to going through a year of Air Force pilot training. You start out and you might be good at one thing but struggle at the next. But if you want to if you really want to improve at negotiation, then I think you need to study negotiation. I think you need to be open to a lot of perspectives and start reading. I'll be candid with you, our system of negotiation is a little bit contrarian, and that's the way Jim Sr. wanted it. There's a great question here. It says, how's the camp negotiation system evolved since the books were published? And I would say that over the years, especially with coaching, we've improved our system of preparation. We've improved the way that we debrief. The human behaviors that we teach and support haven't changed much, because I think Jim Sr. hit the nail on the head when, human beings are human beings, and we all make decisions the same way, but we've gone a step further. Like, for example, if someone says no, there's 4 reasons why anybody says no to any decision. And when you start breaking down our system on a deeper level, things begin to either resonate well with you, you'll agree with them, or you'll say, I disagree. And when you feel strongly that you disagree with an aspect of our system, that is your opportunity to dig deeper and to really discover, like, for example, if I were to say, what are the dangers of a win-win mindset, right? What are the dangers of trying to reach a win-win negotiation? We've spent a lot of time discussing that, and we don't necessarily agree that win-win is a bad thing, but win-win can be a dangerous thing when you feel the responsibility to control the win of your opponent, because we don't even have the ability to control our own win in a deal. Yeah. But what we find is sometimes people compromise early in order to preserve that win. So there's a lot of nuances to negotiation, but start out by studying the game. Read as much as you can. The fact that you're here, ask questions, but start to discover, okay, what do I do well, and what do I do that I need to improve based on all these programs out there that talk about negotiation. And eventually you'll start to make small changes, and you'll get better, and you'll start to realize what a fascinating thing it is. The world of negotiation is probably the most important discipline, I believe, in anybody's repertoire if they're gonna go into business and succeed in the business world. It's going to be around them all day once they start to realize how many agreements are going on at one time.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that we are missing on many different agreements. We are not really even tapping into. We are not even scratching the surface and what we can do when we learn how to make good agreements. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate that, and we will start taking questions now. But before that, I would like to emphasize, and I would like to notify you that Jim is very open to your questions, even offline. If you have a burning question, please reach out directly to Jim or write him an email on jrcamp@campnegotiations.com, and I will put Jim's email in the Zoom chat, so you can actually just copy that. And I see one question from Chris already. Chris, are you ready with your question? Yeah, please unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Gotcha.
Go ahead, please.
Very good, thank you. I appreciate your suggestion to study this. I have read your father's first book. I also read Never Split the Difference, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And yep. If I think about applying these in a specific context, whether it's a work issue that I'm coming up against or negotiating with a team member to have them take on a body of work, I have no problem with that. You mentioned, I don't remember how you said it, but looking for opportunities. Do you have any tips for how we can practice this in everyday situations? I don't know, a conversation with a family member or buying a cup of coffee. Is there a way that we can make it practical enough that we can learn valuable things about negotiation in our everyday life?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things we suggest. If you're gonna read a book and you're gonna start to adapt to a different mindset, a different way of approaching the negotiation, a low risk setting is great. So just some of the behaviors we teach in our system, for example, the next time you have a confrontation, right? The next time you're having a conversation, and we've all been there, somebody will say something that may appear to be a little aggressive, or that you feel like you're being attacked. You know, our typical human nature is to plant our feet and, you know, start to, you know, argue or take that, you know, we take that personally and we take it head on. And the next time that happens, you know, just understand that that person is emotional about something and allow them to be emotional. And, you know, if they attack you, say, well, you know, I can understand you might be upset. I'm sorry you feel that way, you know, and then follow it up immediately with a question, you know, what can I do to help? Or what can I do differently? And watch what happens to their emotion. And you'll see that, and this I know happens in daily life because I've got 3 daughters and, you know, a great wife that is very supportive. But just those interactions with our family members, you know, that's one example. And if you haven't openly given someone the right to say no, watch what happens when you do. Say, you know, if you're trying to get somebody to take on a big project and say, look, you can reject this project. I mean, I know I'm asking a lot of you, and it's okay if you can't do this or you're not willing to do it. The bottom line is I've got to find somebody to do it, but you can tell me, no, it's okay. What are your thoughts? And when you give them the right to say no, watch what happens to their demeanor, their posture, right? And then as soon as you can start asking good interrogative-led questions to get into their world, and you can frame the problems that you're trying to solve in some of these questions, they'll begin to see it through their eyes, and you might be surprised at what they're willing to do. If it's their idea, they're going to be much more comfortable accepting a project versus you trying to convince them to take it. So yeah, low risk settings are great places to exercise it. And then try telling people no, right? It's hard for us to tell people no. But just simply say, no, I'm not, you know, say no to something and watch how they respond, right? Do they engage you and try to convince, or do they want to understand what's behind your decision? And I think you'll find that most of the time, human nature is they don't want to know what's behind your decision. They want to try to persuade you into an agreement. And it happens all the time in sales. I mean, unfortunately, it still happens daily. Any of you that have profiles on LinkedIn, I get approached by people all the time on LinkedIn, and they'll give a very long email about what they can do for our company. And I'm very appreciative of that. You know, everybody's working hard, everybody's hustling. But the best emails I get are one question. What would it look like, Jim, if we could help you do this? And that's it. And that immediately gets me into my world. And they're not presenting all these great facts, figures, intellectual data to help persuade me. They're asking what I'm challenged with right up front. And that alone, the ability to ask those types of questions in a nurturing manner. And that's one thing I have to stress. You have to stay nurturing and respectful at all times. There is no room for aggressive, frustrated. You know, you almost have to stay even keel in all these negotiations. And just that posture alone, when you're negotiating, even with your family, you'll notice a huge difference in their response because they begin to mirror your behavior. And Chris Voss, by the way, very talented guy. My dad and I didn't work with him as much as my dad did, but I got to spend time with Chris back when we were working with his team at the FBI. So I'm very appreciative of his kind words on Start With No, and he's become very successful. Very happy for him. Hope that answers your question.
Very good. You've given a lot of tips there. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Jim. And when did that happen when you worked with Chris Voss? Was it like a while ago?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. It was around the time where I was transitioning. You know, after 9/11, I was spending a lot of time deployed with the military, and that's when I really started to pull away from camp negotiations with the deployments, and you know, early 2000s, 2003, 2004, 2005, that time frame. So Yeah, but I do remember we spent a lot of time together, and the whole crisis negotiation world is obviously a very sensitive subject, and he's got some great stories. One thing I saw an interesting question. I want to answer it real quick. I think it was Christine asked, how is our system different from others? And what's interesting is if you Google systematic negotiation, we're it. There's a lot of theory. There's a lot of tactics. There's a lot of great discussions on what makes a good negotiator. But we literally break it down into fundamental steps that as long as you stay within that system, you're not going to commit any irreversible mistakes. So I have yet to come across another system of negotiation that someone can actually utilize under extreme pressure. And that's kind of the whole idea. How to maintain control in the middle of chaos when a negotiation starts to go the direction you don't want it to. We fall back to a system just like somebody in an emergency room. First responders, they're systematically trained. If I do this, then I do this, and I do this. And flying airplanes is the same way. So Jim Senior, military guy, took a systematic approach to a very complicated subject of negotiation. And that's, I think, where our value comes, is in the fact that we've created a system that once you learn it and it becomes a part of you, gives you ultimate emotional control, not of results, but control of your own behaviors and your own actions.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. And this sounds like, Jim, you need to pay attention to others a lot, what they're feeling, what they're going through. You also need to pay attention to yourself, where you hold yourself up, and you don't want to say, or you're scared to say no, or you're scared to hear no. And that has a lot to do with empathy. As far as I understand, and we had a call with the hostage and crisis negotiation recently, when this call was all about empathy. That was all about establishing empathy early. And I know that there is kind of like an understanding I heard that from Jim Senior, that this relationship thing is actually kind of misleading, and it could actually, you can get lost in that, and you can start to feel like you need to be liked, and you need that relationship, and you start to kind of sell yourself short on the basis that you want to preserve relationship and whatnot. So I'm wondering, like, how those two concepts live together, and what is a good balance here between the need to be liked, which is really getting you in trouble, and at the same time empathy, and well, Chris Voss is called tactical empathy. I don't know how legit to say tactical empathy, just in the concept of relationship, because business is a lot about relationship. The relationship in the corporate, a lot about relationship. What is your take on that, Jim?
Well, I think the foundation of our system, as far as a behavioral principle, is nurturing and respectful. If someone's making a very difficult decision, like you can think about the crisis, right? If you don't have empathy for, you're trying to get somebody to release hostages, right? That's a very, you can call that tactical empathy. It's okay to be empathetic of somebody's decisions and the challenges that they have. But the moment that you start tying those decisions to your relationship, I would say that the stronger the relationship, the more willingness you have to tell somebody no, respectfully and in a nurturing way. It actually builds trust. If you think about family members, I've got a college daughter that is popping into my mind right now. Obviously, my relationship with her is something that is one of the most important things I value. But if I'm trying to get her to discover something and I'm trying to negotiate and reach an agreement with her, the last thing I'm going to let her do is hold hostage my relationship with her so that I'll agree and cave in. Some of my older kids may disagree because you get softer as you get older. But you can never mix the need for the relationship to decision making, even in business. Like, we can't do this to us because we've had a contractual deal forever. We're great tight business partners. One time I heard someone say, well, if you're such tight business partners and you value the agreement so much, now that you're both retired, you play golf together? The answer is probably not. So it's okay to be nurturing and empathetic to their decision, but you can't allow the difficult decisions and the threat of losing a relationship to force you to compromise on what you want. And as long as you stay respectful, they'll trust you. When you tell someone I can't do that, I have to say no, they're not going to think that you're a bad person. And if they try to hold you hostage and saying you're damaging the relationship, that is a trick, that is a tactic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like, relation should be like put on the side for for making the right decision. And there's another question that I would like to read for you from Edmund on the topic of leadership. Could you share your opinion? How would you negotiate with a leader who you don't trust? And hypothetical example: my manager is getting me to do something that is good for his career, but may not be as good for the whole team.
So how do you handle those difficult internal agreements with, the fact is we all have worked for folks that don't necessarily have the good of the organization in the forefront of their mind, and they're all about self-promotion. And one thing I can tell you is that having the ability to have the courage to tell someone no, and to have that interaction with them and to challenge them, I think as long as you remain nurturing and respectful, understanding that they have the right to tell you to go away. I don't want to hear your opinion. I've been through this my whole career in the military where I've disagreed, and I kind of have a reputation with some of my superiors as being disruptive, because I will challenge them and I will try to negotiate with them. And I think as long as you set the agenda that you're trying to help them discover, that there might be a better way to do something that's more beneficial to the organization, even if they say no to you, I don't want to hear your opinion. Remember, they're emotional because they just made a decision. Now let them justify that and let them think on that. I don't want to get anybody in trouble and get anybody fired, but when you're dealing with a difficult leader, having the courage to take them on and negotiate, give them the right to say no. Hey, you can tell me no and I'll leave your office, but I have concerns and I want your permission to discuss. I would hope that you would want your people to elevate problems to you before they manifest into something that we can't manage. That type of an approach takes courage, but if you do it with a system in place, I think you'll be safe, and actually you'll gain a tremendous amount of respect from them. Having the ability to tell somebody that, hey, we have a problem, is a great skill to have. But at the end of the day, if they're all about themselves, they'll self-destruct. They're not going to make it. Leaders that are in it for their own gain, I'm telling you, at some point, it's like a law of the universe. They will eventually become obsolete. They'll move on. You can't change them, but you can only try to manage it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you want to still voice your concern. You still want to voice your opinion, and you may encourage your boss to say no, and that's okay. But you just need to deliver the message because you are actually serving your boss, and it will be unfair if you actually keep it for yourself and don't really deliver your opinion to your boss respectfully, of course. Is that
You can
that's
almost ask, yeah, you can almost ask one question. You can go to your boss and say, I have a concern, but before I bring my concern to you, how open are you to my feedback?
wonderful?
Right? You can ask a question and get their permission to allow you to put something in front of them. If they say, no, I'm not interested in hearing what you have to say, then you say, okay, got it. And then unfortunately that's where people lose really talented employees and teammates, right?
Yeah.
When they don't have a voice because the person's afraid to hear the word no. They're afraid to uncover that maybe they don't have all the answers themselves, which is a great leadership lesson when you find yourself overwhelmed and you have to rely on your team.
That's really insightful advice. So we actually have to wrap up, and we unfortunately don't have time to answer more questions. But the good news is that you can always ask a question. If you have a question, first of all, you can put it in the Slack channel, and maybe you can even say a question to Jim Camp. And also you can reach out Jim directly in LinkedIn, or you can send him an email, grcamp@campnegotiations.com. The email is in the chat of this Zoom call. You can scroll up and you can copy that. Also, you can reach out to me and say, Vlad, I would like to ask this question, and I will connect you. So please keep asking a question. And we actually have some good news. I think we talked to Jim about setting up regular calls when we meet like once a month or once in a couple of months for a Q&A. And Jim will be answering your questions about your negotiating challenges and helping you understand negotiation deeper. So stay in touch and join Negotiation Practice community if you'd like to practice more. And also, I would like to remind that Jim has a book as a gift for you today. And this is a book called Know the Only Negotiation System you need for your business and for your everyday life. If you would like to have a book, please send me or Jim a message with the word book and your email. And if you would like to pre-order Jim's book that is coming out, then please send a message with the word pre-order and your email, and Jim will put you on a wait list, and we'll let you know when the book is getting available. Is there anything I missed, Jim? Would like to say anything when we wrap it up, before we wrap it up?
Yeah, just two things. First, do not hesitate to reach out to me directly. I'm a coach at heart. I love this stuff. I love talking about it. I love trying to help folks. And number two, if we are going to have Q&As in the future, the reason I wanted to give that audio download for you, I think it'll really help with our discussion so that we can those Q&A sessions will be more impactful for you because you'll have more of a background of what we do and how we do it, and it'll lead for some great discussion topics.
Absolutely. Jim, thank you so much for your wisdom and for your time today. It's so amazing. And I will be the first person who will be pre-ordering. And by the way, I heard from you on the other call when we had in private. I don't know, how open are you to maybe customize this book by signing, or is there a possibility that we have something?
Anybody that pre-orders the book, they're gonna come to me directly, and I plan on signing those and drop shipping them to them directly. So yeah, absolutely. The whole point of the book, I'm not going to make money on a book. I'm going to hopefully impact folks and help them improve. I mean, that's the whole point of all this. So
yeah, that's so generous of you, Jim. Thank you so much. It's exciting news for everybody on this call and who is going to watch the recording. Please don't hesitate. You may say no from Jim, but don't get discouraged. Thank you so much, Jim, for your time. I appreciate that.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to me if anybody has any questions. I love talking to folks about this.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for this fabulous conversation. Stay in touch and send us more about your stories. Send us stories about how you negotiate, about your successes, about your wins. We'll be always happy to help you. If you want to take a picture with Jim, you can do it now and celebrate this moment. Take care. Have a
Try-
good
try-
one.
Thank
Try
you,
to make-
Vlad. Thank you, Jim.
Try to make my head look smaller if that's possible.
Thank you so much. Take care,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day. And bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.